All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will not be talking about the original topic he planned to talk about. Lots of gems, lots of not the Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel rant, lots of, yo, bro, do you really know what a weight class is? Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
All right, everyone. Well, here we are with a special edition episode of the Kung Fu Genius. So we are going to do another one of our famous reaction videos. Now, this time we're not going to discuss the person who shall remain nameless, aka Murder, because as we've discussed recently on my awesome Stripey Rambles interview, and even in, I think, one of the Bruce Lee Final Months episodes afterwards, our boy Burdett, his views are tanking. And so right now, I think that Burdett gets like Kung Fu Genius level views on his videos, which is horrific for his channel. Yeah,
bruh.
I like to think that we played a small part in that.
Yes, I would like to think we did play a small part in kind of outing him as consummate bullshit artist. And so now I think people are starting to kind of see that, like, you know, it's just clickbait. It's content which is devoid of any kind of content. It's got nothing there. There's
content
no there
with
there.
no content.
Content with no content.
Man, that was a Bruce Lee saying, right?
Yes, something like that, right? There's lots of Bruce Lee saying. So, but there is another perennial well of, let's say, misguided Bruce Lee information, and that is the Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel. Now, we have discussed the Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel before. Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel, he's got close to 700,000 subscribers.
Oh, wow.
Of course, like these Bruce Lee experts, they can never, ever show their face. He just basically repurposes Bruce Lee content and puts his little narration over it with a kind of less than Wikipedia level knowledge of information about Bruce Lee. And so I'm always kind of shocked at like who actually does well on YouTube with Bruce Lee stuff. When you look at some of these guys, it's like, these guys don't know anything about Bruce Lee. They're just repurposing the Long Beach footage. They're repurposing behind the scenes stuff and then talking about Bruce Lee.
Which is cool footage.
It is, but first of all, it's nothing new. And they're just talking about Bruce Lee over this stuff. And then I guess it's like all those newbies who kind of don't know much about Bruce Lee who are like doing the seal clap. Oh, look at this Bruce Lee stuff. This guy must know what he's talking about because he never shows his face. So the Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel, though, in all fairness, when compared to the Burdett channel, is kind of a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the factuality. So sometimes he will just repurpose footage and he'll say some stuff which is more or less uncontroversial or innocuous about Bruce Lee, or he'll repurpose people talking about Bruce Lee with his little kind of monotone narration over it. And then other times, and this is why it's really hard, because sometimes he'll put videos where it's like, yeah, it's got a clickbait title. That's just because he does YouTube better than we do. So obviously there's some jealousy there because he gets more views than we do. But then like you watch the video and it's like, all right, I mean, he doesn't say anything that kind of rocks the boat, right? But then other times, and this is again why it's so hard to be fair to these guys.
Pull stuff out of there.
He'll literally fabricate bullshit for the sake of a video and a bunch of views. And I think the last time we discussed Mr. Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel, he had done a video where he claimed that Carter Wong, most people know from Big Trouble in Little China, and more hardcore Kung Fu fans know him from other Kung Fu movies, Hapkido, and a bunch of other films that he had done, mainly in the 70s. He repurposed an interview with Carter Wong. Right. Carter Wong doesn't speak English. He only speaks Cantonese. And he translated. And luckily, Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel, he knows Cantonese apparently. And he translated for us noobs what Carter Wong was saying. But the problem is you can actually see the original interview on YouTube. You can find it.
He mistranslated.
And no, Carter Wong is like, he might as well be talking about what his favorite pair of shoes are. He's not telling anything remotely close to what the Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel story is, which is that he had challenged Bruce Lee to a fight.
Hey everyone, just want to let you know Wing Chun Illustrated is now offering a paperback edition through Amazon, reaching a larger global market. And no, they're not ditching the glossy magazine edition through MagCloud. You can now simply choose the version of this magazine you prefer and the one with the cheapest shipping wherever you live. Order your copy of Wing Chun Illustrated today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping for Prime members. Go and check that out.
And then what he did was he used very cleverly photos of Bruce Lee and Carter Wong interacting, because the two of them did meet. Carter Wong was a contract player for Golden Harvest. So Carter Wong literally worked for the same company Bruce Lee worked for. And on the set...
So he put a spin on it.
Yeah, on the set of one of the movies, most likely, I think, Hapkido, but perhaps could have been another film. I think, Bruce was doing his kind of typical... trying to, block my punch kind of speed test. The things we always hear about Bruce Lee talking about how fast he was, where he would say, try to block my punch, and he would do this really fast thing and you couldn't bring your hand up in time. It wasn't like a real fight or anything like that. But it seemed like something like that happens between Bruce and Carter, because there's like a photo of Bruce giving Carter Wong a palm. And he's kind of like, it looks like he's kind of staggering backwards. And then I think that there's another photo where it looks like something's going on, right? But we have nothing to indicate that this was anything more than, Bruce doing his normal, hey, try to stop my kick, or hey, see how fast you are. Can you put your hand up in time before I tag you on the chest or something like that?
Showing him how cool Kung Fu is.
Right. Yeah. And so he takes this and says, see, there was a fight, and then takes a random Carter Wong interview and translates it with him talking about the fight that they have, which never happened. And you can read you can see many other interviews with Carter Wong where he has nothing but respect for Bruce Lee and said nothing of the kind of this interaction. So we can be fair to Bruce Lee, real fight on some videos, but in other videos, bro, you lying. Yeah. All right. And so now, of course, I am not prone to occasionally clicking on a clickbait title. So today, while I was looking for inspiration for what to do for our next video, I actually just went onto our YouTube studio, which is like the behind the scenes for your YouTube channel. Yes. And they actually have a section there called inspiration, where you click on it and it'll kind of tell you what people who are watching your channel, what are they watching? What kind of videos are they clicking on? Now, this is something we never do because, while I'm all for, doing a martial art, teaching martial arts with good business practices and so on and so forth. When it comes to YouTube, I'm like, what? We just do a video and talk. We do pretty much everything wrong in terms of monetizing our YouTube channel. I guess so. Because apparently the way to do it is just show other people's footage, speak in a monotone in vague generalities with no specifics, and come up with an awesome thumbnail where it's like Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali and it just says, let's fight. And apparently if you do that, if you do that, you will get, tons of people watching your videos. That's right. And you won't do it if you actually have honest discussion, including with people who actually know stuff about Bruce Lee. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to give up the general podcast format where we kind of talk and have discussions. And I like doing interviews because it's way better than talking to you for an hour. I actually learned something in those interviews. But I also love answering the questions we get from our Patreon supporters and doing those Ask Me Anything questions. The best. And so, I don't think we're ever going to give up the format, but I think maybe doing more videos of short form content where we kind of do some of this stuff just to get more views and stuff like that, while maintaining the integrity in a way that people like Bruce Lee, Real Fight, and Berta simply can't do. So anyway, I saw a video where it was like, Mike Tyson, and Mrs. Mike Tyson said, Bruce Lee is a joke. That was all it said on the thumbnail. Right. And then, of course, I've seen various clips where Mike Tyson spoke very favorably about Bruce Lee. There. But, he also said stuff like, well, if Bruce Lee could beat me in a fight, that would be a really weird world and stuff. And as a Bruce Lee fan, I'm not of the opinion that he was like some superhuman guy who couldn't be defeated by anyone. I'm all about looking at people in their specific time period, looking at what they do and really looking at the context. It's very easy for people in the modern age to look at older things through a modern lens and critique it in a way that didn't make sense at that time. At the time. And really doesn't even make sense now, given what the contributions of that person was. It's very like, it would be to a certain degree like, I think, criticizing Newton for not figuring out stuff that Einstein would figure out later. Because without Newton, we would not have the foundation for what Einstein then later did. And so I think that it's really weird. The same argument could be leveled against someone like Helio Gracie, one of the, patriarchs of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and what would become Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you would take Helio Gracie, you go back in a time machine, take him, bring him back here, in his weight class, to be totally fair, even though at that time he fought without weight classes, put him in his weight class against either a modern MMA fighter or put him in his weight class against a modern sport jiu-jitsu champion, I don't have any reason to believe that Helio Gracie would not lose all of those matches, because all of those people started with what Helio Gracie finished with. All right.
Exactly.
And they are now building on that stuff, even if what they're doing is not exactly what he advocated or not exactly the way he did it. We are all resting on the shoulders of giants. And then to go back and be like, yeah, I think that guy would lose in a fight or whatever, is to kind of be, in my opinion, a little crass and not educated about what was going on in the time period where this person existed. So it's easy for all these like modern sport competitors, half of them which usually praise Bruce Lee as being their inspiration, and the other half like, I could take him in a fight. Bruce Lee was only an actor or whatever. And what's weird is like when people say he was only an actor, then they clearly don't know about his history growing up as basically a bit of a street punk who would get into fights all the time, got kicked out of various schools for getting into fights, was in legal trouble for getting into fights, would stand up for what he believed in when he fought the karate practitioner who challenged him in the Seattle period, whether it was Wong Jack Man, whether it was spat with Lao Dai Chu, and so on and so forth. So it's not like he was just an actor and he never fought. It's just that they go, yeah, but he didn't fight in sport competition. And this is the thing that drives me nuts. We'll get to it in a moment. I'll discuss that whole thing in a second. But first, I want to kind of look at this one video where it was Bruce Lee is a joke with Mike Tyson on the cover. And then we can see the sausage of how you get 82,000 views in 3 weeks with more or less no original content and a very bland, monotone narration over the top. Okay, and before we get started, just a reminder that the best way to support the Kung Fu Genius is on Patreon. Patreon.com/The Kung Fu Genius for all your Kung Fu Genius needs. For as little as $5 a month, you get access to episodes early, higher tiers of support, get all sorts of goodies like special videos, even the highest tier of support, the baller level, you get a private episode with me, and all sorts of things like my Instagram subscriber reels. If you don't want to support us on Patreon, you can support us right here on YouTube. We have a couple lower tiers of support, which is just basically a thank you for, to us for what we do if you like it. And then we have, I think, like a $9.99 level, which will also give you access to some special secret videos, which I normally only give to the Patreon tiers at that level and above. So anyway, patreon.com/The Kung Fu Genius. So here we go. Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel. Bruce Lee is a joke. All right, here we go.
If Bruce Lee really could beat me in a fight, I would really think this is an interesting world, because that should not happen.
Welcome to Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel. How good?
Okay, so it opens with this like famous clip of Mike Tyson going, Bruce Lee could beat me. It would be a real interesting world. Now, first of all, unlike other Bruce Lee fans who just saying, no, bro, Bruce Lee was too fast. And you see him in Enter the Dragon. And then they like don't realize movie camera rates at that time and stuff like that. And I'm not saying Bruce Lee wasn't fast. Literally everyone who knew Bruce Lee talked about how fast he was, how powerful he was when he hit the bag. There's no doubt. I mean, we would not be so into him if there wasn't a there about Bruce Lee. If he was not just an actor, but also just a brilliant martial artist and mind and innovator or whatever. But this idea that where I disagree with a lot of the Bruce Lee fanboys is that they believe that you have to think Bruce Lee was invincible. Otherwise, you're not a real Bruce Lee fan.
Wow.
And I kind of like go, well, in what other area of your life is that the zero-sum game you set up with yourself? Okay. Anderson Silva, for example, one of my favorite MMA fighters, all right?
Was not invincible.
Was obviously not invincible, famously broke his leg against Chris Weidman. And then when he fought a little bit past his prime, had some not so stellar performances, right? Had he not lost that fight to Weidman, with the first one where he got knocked out, and then later where he came back and broke his leg, had he just retired there, people would be like, bro, there was nobody who could beat Anderson Silva. All right. Because you would have only been exposed to him in that unbeaten streak where he defended the middleweight belt more than anyone else ever has and still has. He doesn't have the record for the number of times the belt was defended. I think that's either John Jones now or Demetrius Johnson, or maybe it's a tie for the two. But definitely at middleweight, he's the GOAT at middleweight, right? But had you never seen him get knocked out by Weidman and then break his leg and then kind of slowly decline, or quickly decline, I should say,
right?
People would be like, bro, there is no way anyone could have beat Anderson Silva. He went up to 205, beat up 205ers, defended the belt multiple times at middleweight. And that would be the belief because you never saw it. Okay. We've never seen Bruce Lee age. We've never seen actual footage of Bruce Lee in a real scrap besides just sparring a little bit at some of the Long Beach things, which is just a sparring match. This is not a real fight. And I'm not the one to say that Bruce Lee didn't have real fights. I'm literally on the John Little's book about Bruce Lee's real fights. Right. Yes, I believe it, but we haven't seen it, okay? We only have second, third-hand accounts of these things. So, of course, I believe that Bruce Lee was probably pound for pound one of the best martial artists, especially in his time, in terms of his mind and his innovation.
Yeah,
I think he's still well beyond where many people are even today. I think he would have found the MMA revolution really interesting, and I think that would have jibed with a lot of his ideas. But the thing is that we just don't know. And when you don't have that evidence, you can't say, yeah, Bruce Lee would totally beat this guy because look at how fast he was, right? It's like, first of all lighter weight guys are really fast. Whenever we watch UFC, like whenever we watch, there's like a heavyweight fight, right? You watch a heavyweight fight, like in the lower cards, it's like not very famous guys. And you watch these guys and you kind of slog through a heavyweight fight. Yeah. And then the next fight is like featherweight or bantamweights, right? And then suddenly you watch and it's like maybe even two no-name guys, right? Yeah. They come out and you're like, oh, and it's exciting. It's always so jarring how much quicker the smaller guys are, especially when you watch a heavyweight fight and then you watch a lighter a fight afterwards, right? And then you realize like, wow, look how fast these guys are, look how dynamic, and the reactions are really quick, and the pacing and the timing and everything is so much faster than a heavyweight fight. Oh yeah. Okay. What do we know about the lighter weight classes, okay, in general? Well, what we know about is when you look at the fighting careers of people in the lighter weight classes, they are not as long as people in the heavier weight classes. So, for example, when you look at the average champions in heavyweight or even light heavyweight in UFC, and I'm sure it's pretty similar in boxing, the heavier weight guys can actually last and have a much longer career than the lighter weight guys. And the reason is because the heavyweight divisions are decided usually by power. And power is not something that goes away quickly when you have size. They're not really decided purely on speed. Of course, there are exceptions, fast heavyweights, Muhammad Ali, so on and so forth. But you could see that heavyweight champions can be champions in much later ages, or much older ages, I should say. Okay. The lighter the lighter weight classes, there seems to be like an expiration date. Yeah. Where if you're fighting at bantamweights or you're fighting at featherweight or lightweight or whatever it is, there just seems to be an age where at some point you're too slow for the division. Okay. So you very rarely, if ever, see like a 40-something-year-old champion in bantamweight. Okay. Whereas you might see that in heavyweight, whether boxing or MMA or what have you, right? So what we know about people who are lighter weights, and Bruce Lee weighed $125 on his best day, is that once you lose that speed advantage, then you don't have that anymore. Okay. And we never saw we saw Bruce Lee at 32. We saw him a few years before But science and statistics tell us
exactly
that he would actually start to get what's known as
Decline.
age-related decline
Mhm.
in the area of speed. Now, does this mean that there are no fast, light guys in their 40s? No. I know some guys in their 40s who are light and who are still kind of fast. All right? But if we're being totally honest and serious here, all right, I'm not as fast as I was in my 20s.
Okay.
However, I'm more experienced,
Mhm.
I'm more powerful, and I would fight a lot smarter than the 20-year-old version of me, right? So it's not to say like if you're a lighter weight guy, once you're in your 40s, your late 30s or your 40s, it's all over for you. It just means that your game needs to evolve differently.
Got it.
Okay? Because now you no longer have this like speed, right? And so
You have to be smarter.
yeah, so you have to be smarter, and then you're going to have to evolve. What we know of Bruce Lee, mainly unfortunately through his films and some of the backyard training, although a lot of the backyard training footage you see of Bruce Lee where he's like kicking the shield, a lot of that stuff is actually post back injury. So there's some people like, oh, some of his kicks looked a little sloppy on the bag or whatever. Yeah, that's actually after he hurt his back. So he's kind of recovering a little bit.
That was his
so,
rehab.
So yeah, so you're not looking at like a perfect version of Bruce Lee right there.
Okay.
But if we look at his films, which is not a great marker because camera angles, film rate, all of this stuff is going to make him look more impressive than he is. And again, not saying Bruce Lee wasn't impressive. I'm just saying
right.
the medium by which you enjoy Bruce Lee, okay, is set up to make him look better. And I'm not saying he wasn't good. I'm just saying facts, okay? We see Bruce Lee pass away at 32. So really the last footage we have is him fighting Sammo Hung at the beginning of Enter the Dragon, because that was the last footage that they shot for the movie. So you can say that watching Bruce Lee, ironically enough, in a setup that looks like modern MMA, skinny and striated to the gills, that is the last we see of him, okay? And this is 3, 4, 5 years before where he would statistically, historically, start to decline in speed. Okay. So we never saw that version of Bruce Lee. We only saw the fastest version of Bruce Lee. So that's
in his prime.
So that's the first thing you have to understand is that so we have to look at him in his time, because for sure within a few years he would not be that fast. That's just statistics and facts. I know there are people that want to believe that Bruce Lee was that Bruce Lee was made out of rubber and fairy dust and he would be that way forever. But those are the fans where I go like, hey man, you can enjoy Bruce Lee without having irrational beliefs about him being like a superhuman. As a matter of fact, the people who believe like, oh no one was better and he would always be this great or whatever, I feel that they actually do him a disservice, because when you read what Bruce Lee wrote, when you listen to his phone conversations, he was someone that was very well aware of the limitations of the human being. So the thing about Bruce Lee, when we talk about what if and all this kind of stuff, is those claims about how good he would hypothetically be are not coming from him. No. So it's also like weird to have to defend claims, because it's not like Bruce was going around saying he could beat up all these guys.
He wasn't self-proclaimed.
All right. Yes.
Right.
These are his fans who have a very difficult time differentiating between his movie persona and his real life persona. And that's where I start to go, you're doing him a disservice, because what makes Bruce Lee heroic, if you want to use that kind of language, and I don't think you have to even look at him that way, but was his ability to overcome the massive amounts of diversity that was just constantly thrown at him throughout his entire career. First of all, he was born with cryptochordism, with one undescended testy, all right? 2, he had one leg shorter than the other.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? He had awful eyesight. Okay? So when you look at Bruce Lee as a physical specimen, I know it's weird, but you're looking at this guy who's like kind of known as like the specimen of martial arts, couldn't see worth shit, one leg shorter than the other, and had some hormonal issues that put him at a disadvantage to other guys. All right. So we're not talking about someone who's gifted with godlike titanium bones and everything is like perfect, right? We're talking about someone who had extraordinary challenges, overcame those challenges. Okay?
Okay.
Became extremely well-read, despite the fact that he was a piss-poor student. Won the respect of the contemporary karate champions, Mike Stone, Chuck Norris, Joe Louis, despite what these guys said occasionally after Bruce Lee was 6 feet under. He won their respect while he was around. Okay. Joey Orbio, famous heavyweight boxer, did some sparring with Bruce outside and said he couldn't even touch him. And that was a heavyweight boxer. So the contemporaries at the time, by the way, he's on record. You can even find that video on YouTube.
Okay.
People go on record to say
Joey Orbio.
Yeah, Orbio. Okay.
Orbio.
Orbillo. All right. Mexican name. All right. And so people went on record to say how amazing he was. The people that knew him, and these were the top guys at the time, the champions, and so on and so forth. But then at the same time, you got this faction like, oh, Bruce Lee never competed. And it's kind of a weird thing because the competitions at that time were point fighting karate. So it's like basically a glorified game of tag. I tag you, and the ref would hypothetically look at, or he would look at that and say, if this was a real fight, hypothetically, that would have scored, you get a point. We're not talking about real full contact fighting where actual damage has to occur to beat your opponent, right? It's not to say that those guys didn't get hurt, but it was tag.
Was Chuck Norris in point karate?
Mm-hmm. Chuck Norris, unlike to give Joe Louis credit, Joe Louis transitioned from point karate into full contact kickboxing.
Okay.
Chuck Norris never did that. So for him basically saying, like, you know, when they interviewed him, like I think in the early like 80s on Letterman, well, you have to understand Bruce wasn't a competitor and I was a competitor. But bro, in tag fighting, okay, I also did point karate sparring when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You're there with the foam pads, and then you tag the guy, and they're a point. You know what I mean? And it's like, so does that mean I have more fighting experience than Bruce Lee because I did point karate tournaments? I have a couple trophies.
Probably,
it's like,
probably so.
What does that mean? All right. It's like, no, not at all. Right. I never fought someone on the rooftop in Hong Kong where like black eyes and blood was involved with my martial arts at that time. He did.
You heard it here first, folks. The KFG just admitted that he's better than Bruce Lee.
because I did point karate, bro, and he never did point karate.
Hey everyone, it's the Kung Fu Genius. Fans and practitioners all know that the wooden dummy is the most coveted tool in Wing Chun, and now you can learn all about it in my cleverly titled book, The Wooden Dummy. I wrote this guide with you, the practitioner, in mind. Rather than mystifying any of the concepts or hiding so-called secrets, I've laid it all out in meticulous detail. The book is contextualized for practitioners of any lineage of the art, not just those who come from WT. Over 300 pages in length, The Wooden Dummy breaks down every aspect from the form, of technical, historical, theoretical details, and it makes it the perfect companion for anyone who's learning the wooden dummy techniques. I've even sweetened the deal for you. If you want to get a copy of this book signed by me, just use the coupon code SIGNATURE when you purchase the unsigned copy, and you will get the signed copy at no additional cost. So go to the link below or go to citywingchun.com/shop. Look up the Wooden Dummy book. Don't miss your chance. This is definitely one of the best books I've ever written on the wooden dummy, and I hope you'll find it's the best book ever written on the wooden dummy. Get yours today. Check it out.
I also did a sport jiu-jitsu tournament when I was 16, 17 years old.
You were in more tournaments than Bruce Lee.
I was in more tournaments, right? Did taekwondo tournaments, sport jiu-jitsu. We were allowed to punch, kick, and grapple, and I grappled with, and I had to fight guys in higher weight classes because there weren't enough people to justify the division. So I actually beat a jiu-jitsu guy in a sport jiu-jitsu contest in 1997. So does that mean I have more real fighting experience than Bruce Lee?
The evidence is piling up.
Evidence is clear. And oddly enough, I won that fight in front of James DeMille, Bruce Lee's third student. So he actually witnessed me beating, using my Wing Chun to beat
Is there footage?
There might be. So I heard that that someone had filmed it.
Okay.
I've never seen it.
Never seen the footage.
All right. Maybe someone has it, right? So anyway. So, but it's kind of weird then to look at him through this lens. Why would Bruce have any interest in what's essentially a glorified game of tag? All right. First of all, there was no money in it. Bruce had, reminds me of like Total Recall. I got 5 kids to feed, right? Well, yeah, eventually 2 kids to feed. He had a wife and a mortgage.
Yes.
Okay. So the idea that he's like, no, but for the honor of testing myself in the martial arts, let me join a bunch of local sport karate tournaments in which is probably minimal to no pay. For what? Okay. He's not even allowed to do half of the stuff he teaches, like low line kicks and things like that, right? So it's a really weird thing when people go, oh, he didn't compete. There was no MMA back then. There was no kickboxing. And also, it was funny. A few weeks ago, I had someone comment like, well, there was like Thai boxing going on in Thailand at that time. Bruce could have gone to Thailand to test himself out or whatever, right?
He could have.
But it's such a weird thing because, again, this is that superimposing a modern lens on a past epoch, right? And this doesn't make sense for a few reasons, okay? One, again, the aforementioned Bruce had serious financial constraints. He was pretty dirt poor until he started making some money, and then he died, okay? All right? So it's not like Bruce, because he had done Green Hornet and he was hanging out in Bel Air, he was like just swimming in money, okay? No. He was having a really hard time paying his mortgage. He was, most of his life was a financial struggle.
Paycheck to paycheck.
Right? Yes, absolutely. And it didn't help the fact that he liked to overspend, okay? So the idea that he's going to suddenly ship himself off to Thailand to what fight in Lumpini Stadium for what? A couple $100 Thai dollars so that he could test himself, so that retroactively people on YouTube would be like, yeah, well, Bruce did fly all the way over to Thailand and he did beat the champion. So I guess his Jeet Kune Do theories are totally legit. It's like, because, and the funny thing is when people comment that stuff, you realize Bruce wasn't the one making all these claims. And what you realize, it's not Bruce, it's you that need him to either fail so you could feel better, like, oh, well, yeah, remember that one time Bruce went to Thailand and then he failed? Yeah, well, I'm totally better than him, right? Okay. And it's really weird because it's like this strange martial arts voyeurism where like people want to watch other people do things, but they don't want to do those things themselves. And sure, it would be an interesting experiment to see how Bruce Lee would have fared in actual scraps against other people, other styles or whatever. But the truth is, we don't have that. So we're only dealing with hypotheticals. I don't think it's actually that important because he's not the one making the claims. It's his delusional fanboys. Okay. I think we need to look at what Bruce Lee accomplished. I need to look at what he taught. We need to look at what are the things that what was his dent on the martial arts world, and not go, yeah, but he didn't do XYZ, because that stuff is usually for the commenter to make themselves feel better. Yeah, but he didn't go and do this because if he did, he would have lost and then I would feel better about myself. And that's kind of the undercurrent of a lot of this, like, let's destroy the, not to mention a little tiny bit of racism. Let's put down that little Chinese guy. You know what I mean? Because it's totally fine to say that Michael Jai White would beat Bruce Lee in a fight. But can you imagine if Michael Jai White came out in the 70s, if Michael Jai White was Bruce Lee, okay? Bruce Lee wasn't Chinese. He was black. He was 5'7". He was a small guy. And now comes this jacked Chinese guy, twice his size, going, no, kick the shit out of that guy, right? People would be up in arms, all right? But it's okay because, you can kind of laugh at the funny little Chinese guy with the accent. You know what I mean? And like the racism doesn't seem to matter that much when it goes that way. It only seems to matter when it goes the other way a little bit. And I feel that those are very unfair criticisms about Bruce Lee when he's not the one making those claims. So anyway, so some guy said, why didn't Bruce ship himself off to Thailand? And I'm like, well, if we look, when was Bruce Lee kind of at his peak physicality before he made those movies? It would be in the late 60s. So it would be post Green Hornet, but pre-back injury.
Okay. So
it's in that kind of time period right there. And that was at the time when Bruce Lee was the brokest and poorest. So the idea that broke version of Bruce Lee would ship himself off to Thailand just for the sake of proving his JKD theories, I think it's no, bro, you're the one who wants that. You're imposing a situation which could not have existed even if we went back in time.
I was thinking about.
Not to mention, look, the consent, to a certain degree, yes, we know Thai boxing is very brutal, very tough, and very realistic. But those were also other Asian guys who were about Bruce's size. Bruce was in the States sparring and teaching guys who are a head taller than him. People like James DeMille, who was a former, who had boxed before and had boxing experience. And Ed Hart was also a boxer, and Jesse Glover was a judo player. And these were bigger, stronger dudes who had actual fighting and martial arts experience, who all were like, no, Bruce was the shit. And they were all going to learn from him. And he was experimenting with these things on those guys. So I'm not saying he wouldn't have had something to learn if he went in the ring with a Thai boxer in the late 60s. But the idea like that somehow he wasn't trying these things out, especially in the late 60s when he was starting to advocate the full contact sparring with the equipment on, is just to not know Bruce Lee. It's just, he was just an actor. Well, you're just a YouTube commenter who doesn't even use your real name, bitch.
Oh.
So it's kind of weird coming from people who they themselves probably never even walked into a martial arts school, and then they want to talk about who's a real fighter and who's not. So I get why Mike Tyson would say something. It would be a weird world where someone
interesting
Bruce's size, because to come back to the previous point where we talked about what do we know about people at that weight class when they get older, where they lose their speed. What else do we know about people at that weight class? That even the fastest, most powerful of those guys don't necessarily have the power to knock out someone who's also a trained fighter of a higher weight class. And so this is the problem where people lose the thread a little bit, because Bruce had bigger, stronger guys that he was teaching and he was showing his theories to, and he was making them better. But if you were to make things equal, which is to say, do it in a sportly fashion,
all right,
we put gloves on, we'll settle on rules, whether it's boxing, kickboxing, or later MMA. You're still settling on a rule set. Okay, now it's a fair contest, but now we have a weight disparity between the two contestants.
Almost 100 pounds.
The problem is you're going to have an issue with the power, especially when you have the gloves, which are going to cushion some of that power. And I remember, although it's not maybe the same exact comparison, but there was a video on Instagram where they had a female boxer, I believe that she was professional and very, very, very powerful. And you would just see, bam, and she was hitting with this hook.
Oh, I saw this.
And really powerful. I mean, I would say she probably has a stronger hook than I have, right? And then there was just a heavyweight there with his arms up like this, and let her hit unrestrained as hard as she wanted.
She was rocking him.
And she was rocking him, and nothing was happening.
He was like, oh.
And this is where then you have physics. And then people are going like, oh, Mr. Kung Fu Genius, are you saying that Bruce couldn't beat someone bigger, stronger? One, didn't say that. Two, we have to look realistic about size differences, okay? And we have to take these things into consideration. However, Bruce wasn't the one making all these claims.
Okay.
And yes, I know people are going to say, yeah, but Bruce is so fast. You come to him, he's going to kick you in the knee and break your knee, and then it doesn't matter how big you are. Yes, if he gets that shot perfect, okay? If he doesn't and the guy gets past it, and now you're in a closer range where you don't have the ability to move out because the guy is gooning you, the fight very quickly changes. And that is not to take one iota away from Bruce Lee.
Not at all.
Okay? Because he was the one who understood this. It's his delusional fanboys who don't get it. And I realized that when we started making this video, we were going to talk about Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel. But instead it's become a topic about Bruce Lee and whether he was a real fighter and weight classes and all those things. And I'm happy with that being the topic. Which just means we're going to have to make sure it's reflected in the title and in the thumbnail, because we're totally not talking about Bruce Lee Real Fight Channel. So this was such a tease. This was not a review of that guy's videos. All right. This was a total meandering KFG podcast episode. And I'm okay with that. And that's all I got to say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. Hit that bell for notifications. Let me know if you like these kind of topics. Even if I end up not really talking about that topic on my episode, my bad. Hope you liked it anyway. Don't forget to support us on Patreon, YouTube memberships, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm sea gung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex, Richter, always the victor.
His views have been going down the shitter. So, sorry. Andrew, you got to edit that out, because apparently if you curse in the first few minutes of your video, it gets demonetized. So
no.
Edit that
Down
one
low.
out. All right. You don't have to worry about the ones later in the video. You pop off screen for me to do the outro, and then you'll pop in to do the intro. All right.
Pop off.
Yeah. So it's just me. Because it's weird if I'm doing the outro and you're like sitting there like a goon. You're moving like you got hemorrhoids.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, my
Jesus
knees
Christ.
caught in me.
Right. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Hercules.